Welcome back to the Pudding Pals podcast, where the proof is in the pudding, and this pudding is thick. But girls, today, this pudding is deep. This pudding is deep. Our guest today is Moira Khan, a grief educator and founder of Grief Span Education, a platform dedicated to building what she calls grief literacy. And before we kind of, get into it, our listeners are going to hear all of our personal stories, how we've experienced grief. Most of us through our parents or in-laws, and I think it's very important that we, acknowledge those losses have happened kind of in chronological order. You expect to one day bury your parent, and it's hard, and we're in grief. But there are so many parents out there that have unexpectedly had to bury their children. And so many parents fighting to keep their children alive and deep in that grief. And you know how hard it was for us to get up and put one foot over the other. And I think it's so important we acknowledge how hard it must be for them to find the strength to go on because they lost what they lived for. And today, I really hope this episode helps anyone dealing with any type of loss and any type of grief. So yes.
Yikes.
Yikes, exactly. This is the start.
It's going to be deep, but we're all here for each other, and let's bring on Moira.
Let's bring on Moira.
Welcome to the Pudding Pals podcast.
Moira Khan, welcome to the Pudding Pals podcast. We're so excited to have you here. Moira, you help people understand grief as a lifelong, evolving part of love, really. And you bring compassion, language, and community, something so many of us face in silence. And we're really grateful you're here today to have this conversation.
It's amazing. Thank you so much for having me today. I'm so grateful you reached out, and it's just always part of my journey to help others and continue the work I do. So I'm super grateful to meet you all today. Thank you so much for having me.
Let me introduce who's on the couch. We have Rachel, hello. Steph,
hi,
Ashley,
hi,
myself, Danielle, Jordan, and Alexa.
Hello.
We've all have been dealing with grief in so many different ways. So we'll all get into our stories as we talk to you and ask questions. But before we start, can we hear your story and what got you into this and what moment led you to the Grief Span Education?
Sure. Okay, so I have a slightly lengthier story than some, perhaps, but I'll try and keep it succinct. In short, I've lost both my parents and my brother, and it was in a space of a 5-year period from about 2014 onwards. I am from New Zealand originally, which is where I was born and raised. I now live in Spain, and I spent 12 years in the UK as well, so I've been around a bit. But for most of that part, I've been away from my parents. So since 2007, I moved to the UK and left my parents and my brother in the UK. So my brother and I were the only siblings. And in 2014, my mum she got sick suddenly, and it wasn't expected, although she had struggled with rheumatoid arthritis all her life, and pain and various different things in and out of appointments and surgeries and things. But at the time when she got taken into hospital, I had to fly from the UK to New Zealand on an urgent flight, and I was 6 weeks pregnant at the time, and it was our first baby, and we had been trying for 2 years. So you can imagine do I get on the plane? I need to go. I felt like I needed to go. So I did, and it was the worst flight I could ever imagine, but it was one of those things I had to do, and I made it just in time. It was 2 days and she passed away, which left me with my dad and my brother. And my dad was actually quite ailing at the time, although I didn't expect him to go, but he wasn't in a home at that stage. He was still in the family home. So I spent 5 weeks at home, and then I had to go back to the UK because I needed to, do all the normal pregnancy things and appointments, etc. And my dad was still sick, so I'm kind of dealing with my grieving dad as well as me grieving for my mum while I'm pregnant with my first baby. And yeah, that was unimaginable at the time. I just didn't foresee any of that happening. And it's not the ideal situation when you're becoming a first-time mum. And so my dad was ailing, so I'm supporting him from a distance in the UK. My brother's in New Zealand still, but he's actually quite ill too, so he's not really sort of present to look after my dad that much. And then in 2017, suddenly, I just had a second baby, so we'd had number two, and my brother died of a heart attack. Again in New Zealand, but it was so sudden. It was just, I didn't even get to say goodbye. It was just completely sudden. And I didn't get a chance to go to farewell him because I was literally 6 weeks postpartum. So there was a bit of a trend going on here with babies and losing my family. And so that was my brother in 2017. We were still living in the UK at that stage. Again, I'm having to call my dad this time to tell him that his son had died, and which was devastating. And again, I'm having to support my dad through another grieving process, along with going through postpartum grief, etc., all again. And then we moved to Spain. And so in 2018, we moved to Spain for my husband's job. And again, my dad was sort of going downhill fast. He didn't have anything terminal illness, but he had neuropathy. He had various other things going on. His heart was failing. And I had to go and move him into palliative care. I took my two babies home to New Zealand. They were 3 and 16 months at the time. I did it on my own. I went home to put him into palliative care, pack up his apartment, do everything like that. And that was about April of 2019. And then on the Christmas Eve that year, he died. And so I didn't get to farewell him in person either, in a sense, but I knew that was really going to be the last time I would say goodbye to him. And then I was meant to go in the April of the following year to have his funeral, do all the estate stuff, because it was left to me, of course, being the only one left in the family. And of course, lockdown happened. So all the borders shut, New Zealand shut down, wasn't allowed anybody in. So I spent 14 months in limbo, really grieving and just not being able to say goodbye to my dad and do the things I needed to do, and along with lockdown and everything. And so, sorry, that's not short, but it's it's very complicated, and that's my very lengthy grief journey. And that's kind of why over the last 2 years, I've gone on this journey of grief span education and qualified as a grief therapist, grief educator and coach, helping others. A lot of my work is actually in the States. It just seems to have fallen that way, which is lovely. It just seems to be a real need, and I do work all around the world online. And so that's kind of why I started Grief Span.
That's awesome.
Amazing.
I mean, we all can use a little bit of help. I think Ashley is going to start with her story.
Yeah. So my mom passed away unexpectedly about 6 years ago, and I too was a young mom, or a new mom. Well, 3 of my boys were born, and I used to have the worst time going to Target, because you go to Target and everyone's there with their mom and their young kid and their stroller, and I couldn't go there. I couldn't go to the mall. And then they got a little older, and it became going to their school performances and their baseball games, and everyone's there with their grandparents. And I was lucky at the time to have my mother-in-law with me, but I still cry at every single one. And then this summer, now I've lost my mother-in-law too. So I really am that person that has nobody to go sit with me. Of course, my husband, but that maternal support. And I am jealous, for a lack of better term, and I feel guilty that I sit there and cry and have to wear sunglasses for my kids. So how do you grieve that loss of no one with you, but be happy for your kid at the same time?
Yeah, it's firstly, my heart goes out to you. I understand exactly the feelings that you're going through. I know this is such a a heavy topic, but it's very real for mums and women especially. And we go through these things as a mum, especially new mums, when we need our mums the most, and that's not something we thought we were actually ever going to have to deal with. Not having our mums around when our children were babies, and that's been devastating for me as well. So I understand. What was your mum's name?
Barbara.
Barbara. Yeah, and your mother-in-law?
Lydia.
Lydia. They're beautiful names. I think, there are so many things that we can acknowledge the fact that there are ways we can deal with it, but it's also acknowledging the fact that it's okay to grieve these moments and sit with it, because we need to find space to have these moments. Otherwise, we will just push it down, and the things that come as a result of pushing our grief down are immeasurably worse. And so I've been through all of this in these stages, and it still comes with me too. I live in a country in Spain where grandparents are so prominent in family life, and I think I probably do it on a daily basis. I look at grandparents, they're wheeling their grandchildren around, they're picking them up from school, they're everywhere, and I just get this pang in my heart every single time I see this, because my kids don't get that. And I've often had my kids come home and say, my friend said to me today, Mummy, that why don't you have grandparents? What happened? Why it's really weird. I get to spend all the time with my grandparents. I mean, kids just say things like that. It's just normal. But it's real for them. It's real, and it hurts, and but it's okay. You're valid. All of those feelings you're having are valid. There is absolutely no solution or no real answer for any of this. It is just, if you're able to be supported by the people around you and have the support that you need, the things that I've been able to do while I've been here are just creating a sort of a family network and support network while I have. And I see you've got such a wonderful network with your girlfriends, and that I know it doesn't replace what you haven't got. I know that. But it does help in some senses. There's so many ways we can help keep our legacy of our mums alive, by telling their story, sharing their memories with our kids. I do that all the time with my kids. I tell them, and they see me cry. I don't hesitate to let them see me sad on their anniversaries or birthdays, or whenever a grief wave hits me. I don't hesitate to do that. So I don't know if that might give you a little bit of peace, but it's just a few little things that might help you along the way. But support is the biggest thing too. So I'm really sorry for your loss.
And we will always sit with you, even though it is not the same.
I am lucky. I do have
you
a lot
know.
of girlfriends and a very big family, but I never thought I would be a motherless mother. It's a really hard thing to sit with.
No.
I think just to back on Ashley's story, how do you explain to your kids, like in a happy moment, that you're crying, that they can understand, like when we do cry, at their school performances, like, but we're so happy for them, but that person not being there next to us is so hard. How do you explain to your kid, like, why are you crying? Like, why are you crying?
Yeah, and I know as humans we're conditioned to, oh gosh, I can't let them see me cry. It's just something we've been conditioned to do. And this is what all part of grief education was. What I do is trying to normalize the fact that talking about grief and death is actually okay. And it's actually what helps us through this grief process. So my kids are very, very aware now of being able to, are you okay, Mummy? And then I turn it into, oh, Mum, Grandma would have done this, and she would have loved to see you in this performance, or she would have, done this. And when I was a kid, she used to do all these things for me on performances, and she made my costumes, and, so maybe to spin it around a little bit to tell the story about your grandparents, what they would have done in this moment. It just takes a little bit of that edge off the emotional roller coaster that you're going through at that time, and brings them into grieving a little bit with you, but sharing happy memories, because they were the stories that they remember. And my kids always come to me now and tell me, Mummy, I remember that story you told me, or, oh, that's when Grandma did this, or that's when Granddad did this, or, and it just takes a little bit of the pain away in that moment. And it's okay for them to see you cry. It really is.
So my dad also unexpectedly passed away on a trip. So I feel like I never had closure. He wasn't sick. He died of a heart attack. He wasn't home. It took a long time to get him back here to bury him. He was out of the States. Every time I think about it, I am like sick to my stomach. That phone call is like replayed in my head over and over and over again. It was in the 3 a.m. And sometimes I wake up and I like don't think about it, and sometimes it feels like I am just like stuck in this slump in a wave of just like grief, and it just feels like it's never gonna end. Like it doesn't feel like it's gonna end. Like, is there an end? I don't really feel like it gets easier.
Just changes.
It just changes. Yeah. Like I just don't.
Yeah, that's it. Sorry, what was your dad's name?
Joe.
And how long ago was it?
8 years. And then we had our son. We got pregnant 2 months after he passed.
Mm-hmm.
And I just like all the things that he's missing, like destroys me.
Yeah. And that's absolutely normal too. It's okay. 8 years is, I know it sounds like a lot, but it's actually not that long, and no, we don't ever get over our grief. Our grief is forever. I'm sure you've heard that before too. It doesn't make it any easier to accept, but we just learn to grow around it. And that is part of everybody's journey, and everybody's journey is unique. You are not going to be the same as someone else who's lost their dad. Every time someone loses someone, it depends on how they lost them. And also, I can relate. I lost my brother a similar way as well, and I didn't get to say goodbye. There was no answers as to how, and I didn't know what happened after that scenario either. So quite often in these circumstances, it's the death that shapes the grief. And when you lose someone so suddenly, you don't have any answers. That impacts the way we grieve. And is your mum still around?
Yeah.
Yeah. And you can support each other and talk about this openly?
Yeah.
It's a time thing. It is really a time thing, even though we won't ever get over it. Your dad is still very present in your heart, and the memories will always be there. But the legacy that I've built for my parents over time has taken me my dad's been gone now 6 years, it'll be in December, and mum just, 11 years now. And it's taken me this long to get to here, but I'm still sad. I am still grieving. I wake up moments in the night sometimes and still think, heck, I wish I could call my dad, because my dad was more of the one I would always call to ask things about business-wise, or, he was always very much like-minded like me. And there are so many things we can all do when it comes to grief, exercise, meditation, journaling, all of that. But there are, sometimes it's just okay just to cry and grieve. There is no rules around what you should and shouldn't do. And it's support around you as well, and having the understanding, and just people that will understand and just sit with you. That there is no fix. So the people around you won't have a fix, and that's okay. And people just to sit with you and just be with you in your grief is actually more important than you realize.
Danielle and I talk often. I also lost my father 11 years ago. He was sick on and off for 10 years with lymphoma. He went into the hospital because he was being treated for the wrong type of cancer, and they ended up accidentally over fluiding him and shrunk his heart. And while we were in there, he went into heart failure. They sent us out, and then they came back and told us he wasn't going to make it. So we went back in. And I think that moment of sitting with my dad's body and just kissing his cheek over and over is the moment I probably changed forever. You know, my dad was my everything. I said at his eulogy, anything that happened to me in my life, whether it was good or bad, a bee sting to a breakup, the only person I wanted is, I would cry, I want my daddy. Because I didn't have the relationship with my mom that I did with my dad. My dad didn't value anything other than family. He didn't care what anyone thought. And after his death, that changed in me. I wanted to live more for him. I left my job. I worked for a cancer organization. I wrote about loss in the Huffington Post a lot. And really tried to accept his loss and work through it in therapy. Change who I dated. I wanted to find someone more like him. He never got to see me in a healthy relationship. And I truly believe he sent me my husband because they are the same person. Scary. But it's crazy, you know. So much has happened this year. My son had a procedure, and I'm still on that hospital floor screaming for my dad. And last week I was sick. My husband could be rubbing me and telling me it's going to be okay. But I am still screaming in a hospital, I want my daddy.
Yeah.
And I don't feel like that's ever going to change, you know, although so much of my identity truly has, because I value different things, treat the people in my life like he did. I know I've changed. I know death changes us, because how could it not, you know? But I still have those moments, even though I've tried to work through this loss as best as I possibly could. How do you think we can have death change us in a positive way and not become bitter or angry? How can we become better people from a loss of this magnitude? Because that's all I know any of us want, is to become better and to not become bitter.
Yeah. Jordan, what was your dad's name?
Erwin.
I'm really sorry for your loss too. It's death and shaping. It's a really eerie that you brought this up, because I thought there was something that I might talk to you about on this topic, because death has changed me so much, and it does. There is absolutely no way it can't. You know, loss of our loved ones is absolutely something that, you know, will change us forever. Whether that be for a period of time where we are bitter, of course we're going to be bitter, of course you're going to be angry, of course you're going to feel all of these emotions, and we can basically throw the steps of grief out, because that's not something that was designed for, basically, you know, I'm sure you've heard about the stages of grief and those kind of things, but it wasn't designed for us as grievers. It wasn't ever developed in that process for this purpose. So we are effectively, when we lose someone this close, and from what you describe your dad as, Jordan, it's a relationship where you're learning to live without this person, and your brain is rewiring itself after having your dad all your life and trying to rewire its processes of not having that person around anymore. And that's such a hard thing. You cannot replace those memories. You cannot replace the presence of your dad or any of those things, because you're trying to live your life without him now, and that's a real thing, you know. And of course we're going to be bitter, and we get angry. I still get road rage at stupid things, because I want to, you know, and it may not be anything. It's just because my dad was so into cars, and I I want to tell him about all the things that are happening with cars these days, because that's the conversations I would have had with him, but he's not here anymore. And I get really angry at people on the road because they're not doing what I want them to do, but that's not their fault. And that's just a little example, but there are many a times, but it's okay. It's absolutely okay. It comes back to what I said before about validating what we feel and not feeling guilty about it either, for going through traumatic periods in our lives. When you're talking about your son as well being ill, and when you're in hospital dealing with a sick child as well, all we want is our parents. And if you have, such a close, or had a close relationship with your father, and then of course he's the first person that will come to mind, and that's still lovely. You wouldn't want it to be any other way, would you? And that's the nice thing. We are bringing back memories of things that we know that they instilled in us, and we're living their life for them now. And oh gosh, I'm getting chills now. All of these stories that I'm hearing from you, beautiful people, are such lovely memories and such beautiful relationships with people. And they're the things that you need to just keep talking about. Even this today is like a mini therapy session, because the more we share about their stories, their life, it's their legacy. We're continuing their legacy. And I will do that until the day I die. I will absolutely share my parents' story, my brother, and everything else, because that's what I want to do, and that's what makes me feel better. It doesn't mean I'm not grieving still. It doesn't mean I'm sad. But there is a point at where it's okay for joy and grief to coexist. And that's okay. There's nothing to say that you can't be sad and happy at the same time. There's nothing to say that you can't enjoy life while still grieving for your parents and wanting them there so badly to see everything that you're doing and the acknowledgement that they would have given you. And that's just normal. I miss that every day. I don't get to ask my parents the questions that I would have asked them if I had been a parent with them around. And that's really frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's one of the biggest things for me. I can't just pick up the phone and say, oh, what would you do in this situation? What would you say? What was I like when I was that little? Because I never asked these questions, And so that's changed. I feel like I went through that stage of being really bitter. I was really angry. I even went through, and maybe this is not a topic for now, but I even went through this whole doubt, religious doubt, because I just didn't know, why was this happening to me? Why is it that someone took my entire family away? And I was only 38 when my mum died, and I was 42. I mean, I considered myself an orphan. I know I don't want to say that, but it's just, why? Why? All of the time. I still have those moments, but I have moved along a little bit. I'm not so bitter anymore. Because I found a purpose as well. I found a purpose.
Just one question. So I do try to talk about my dad. We call him Papa Joe, and I have a big picture of him in their playroom. But like when I bring it up, my kids are 6 and 4, and I'll say something like, "Well, he's dead." I'm like, oh, okay. I said something the other day. She said, my daughter, her name is Joey after my dad. But I said something. She's like, well, he's dead, so he doesn't need to celebrate or something. And I was like, okay.
They don't fully grasp it.
They're so black and white, which also
it.
makes it, I guess, a little easier.
It takes the edge off of it, I think.
Yeah.
So I just kind of laugh now. I'm like, oh, okay,
right,
but true that.
Yeah, true that.
Okay, but yeah, I don't ever want them to feel uncomfortable about it, about death. But I do want them to understand. I'll say Papa Joe's not here anymore. Whatever, but he's still I said he's still my dad. She goes, no, he's dead. So it's just how do you explain to them, little kids?
Mm-hmm. My kids say to me too, they go, your mom's dead.
Yeah, I think it's an age thing,
Okay.
God. They're so morbid. They've always been so morbid.
Literacy around death
our
comes
dog
with
all
age,
the time.
Yeah. I think that's the beautiful part about kids, right? They're resilient. From the mouth of babes, right? They just come out with what's on their mind, because what they don't know any different. They don't know how to filter stuff like we do, and that's the problem. We've got to a stage in our life where we've learned to filter things so much because we think we're going to upset someone by talking about it. And I don't know how many times you can, walk into a room, and if someone knows that you've just lost someone, and they will just like go in the other direction, or they will dance around the whole topic, and then, or there'll be silence. When someone asks me what I do, and then they ask me why I do it, it's such a conversation killer. It is just the biggest conversation killer. I'm a
buzzkill.
I'm just like, what do you do? Oh, I'll say, see you later. Yeah, I'm a grief coach. But why? Oh, my parents and my brother are dead.
Yeah. It's like when I started dating after my dad passed away, and the questions would say, "Oh, and what does your dad do?" Or how are my dad's dead. And then it would be like, dun, 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 crickets.
Check, please.
Crickets. Please.
It is really sad because death, not sad, I guess, but death makes people
uncomfortable.
Yeah. It makes, but like that is life, and it's
a part of life.
When that movie Coco came out when our kids were little, that was like, especially me, I'm Mexican, so like my family did not celebrate the Dia de los Muertos, but I found that Disney movie to be so beautiful to show you like there's life after death, but it also shows you to honor the people that were before you, like come to them once a year and show and like really celebrate their life and their legacy that they've left behind. Yeah. I felt like that was so good for the kids.
When my mom died,
oh God, the Lion King is so sad.
Oh, like so cry.
Like Mufasa, Nana's now in the sky. Like, I didn't know how to explain it, but those movies really help them.
Yeah.
But it is true. A lot of times when people say
it's a really good point. I wouldn't have thought about that right now, but it is actually a very good one. Coco I'm glad you mentioned that, because kids relate to it in some way, because it's magical, and it's kind of a nice little story, and the guitar and everything. And I love the whole concept of Dia de los Muertos. And of course I live in Spain. They don't actually do that so much, but it's a nice way for kids. There are a lot of South American people here as well, so it's nice. And we have churches in Madrid that celebrate these kind of things, and they have the whole the candles and the photos, and I love it. I absolutely love it, because it is such a nice way to honor those that aren't here anymore. And for kids, yes, they are very direct, because they don't. It's like what I said before about my kids having questions about their grandparents and from other friends in their class. They're so direct. It's no filter. There's absolutely no filter. But I don't think completely. It's up to you as parents as well what you decide to share with your children, and that is a completely very personal thing and a very one-on-one parenting decision for you. But for me personally, I don't think it's damaging. Obviously I'm not a psychotherapist, so just disclaimer. But I would have appreciated from my standpoint, my mum and dad had no family in New Zealand either. So I grew up with no grandparents, effectively. I had my dad's parents, but they weren't very close. They moved from the UK to New zealand. So effectively I did grow up. I didn't know my mum's parents at all. She had a big family. She was one of six kids. And my mum lost, her mum and dad while she was in New Zealand, and I didn't know anything about it. All I'd known was that mum lost her mum and her dad, and that was it. It wasn't spoken about. So I grew up not really knowing about my grandparents, not discussing grief, not knowing why my mum was upset or whether she was reacting to things because she was grieving. And I would have preferred to have known. When I think about it now, I would have loved to have known more about my grandparents while I was growing up, because I didn't get that chance.
Yeah. Transparency. It's so important.
Transparency, yeah.
I'm eager for Alexa to get into her story, because I feel like there's a lot of people out there that can definitely relate.
Yes. So for me, I have two older brothers and a younger sister. And growing up, our family was really close, and I spent a lot of time with my cousins. One in particular, my cousin was 5 years older than me, and we grew up as sisters. We were both actually the only ones in our family that were half Mexican and half mixed with something. I'm Brazilian. She was mixed with black. And we just bonded. We both felt like the black sheep of our families. And we were just raised really close together. We would fight as little kids, like physically wrestle as little kids, all the way to being an adult. She had kids. I was like, I am their aunt. I babysat them any chance they got. Anytime she wanted a date night, anything, I would stay the night with them. We'd go out like on vacations together because I was at that time like 17, 18. So I became really close with her as an adult, but really seeing her as a mom. She was my first real example of like organic food. I've never even heard of it. My family was like, what are you even talking about? She was like, for me, my mother, like I saw her and I was like, wow, she can do it. I can do this. Like she had these kids in every single class. They were just very active. She was so active with them. She was so patient with them. She was teaching them so much. These girls were so smart. And when it would be 11 years on Thanksgiving, she always had asthma, and she had an asthma attack and passed away. She was at a kid's party, a pajama party, and she didn't feel well, and she had her 2 daughters with her, and she told the older daughter, I think that she knew that it was happening, and she sat with her 5-year-old at the time, and it kills me because I have a 5-year-old daughter, and I can't imagine me having to put her in this position. But she was like, Haley, I love you so much. Go get help. Mommy doesn't feel good. And that was like the last thing that she told her. And she had an asthma attack and passed away. She never gained consciousness. She just was gone. My whole life, like I said, she had very severe asthma. She was in and out of the hospital all the time. She always had her nebulizer, always had her inhaler. Couldn't be around dogs because that's just how her body was. She was like growing up, I remember she was always sick. But when we went to the hospital and she passed away, the doctors were like, this doesn't happen. Like, you don't pass away from an asthma attack. Once again, for me, she was my mother figure hero. And at the time, my nieces were 5 and 18 months, and the 18-month-old still like was breastfeeding, obviously not exclusively, but she was so attached to her mom. And to see that, and to see my family, who's not so emotionally intelligent and has had a lot of trauma in their past, not deal with grief in the right way, have to redo it and step in for these young kids and make decisions for these young kids. And at that time, I was 22, 23. And so I was still like a really young adult. And it's really hard now as a mom. When I first became a mom, the person that I felt like I always can go to with these really hard things and like these new things I've never had. And this person that I looked up to for everything, including this chapter, even though I only got to see it for 5 years, like she was the most incredible, selfless mom. And I try to be like her all the time, but to not have someone to like call and ask for advice from, like that's really hard. To see other people have their siblings or aunts. Like I am so sad for my kids because we grew up so close, and I just wish they had an aunt that could tell them stories about me when I was little, and you know, her perspective of me and what else I should be doing with them, because now, you know, her daughters are junior, one's a junior in high school and the other one is in middle school, and I know they've never gotten the proper outlets to grieve. It's not a subject that like I speak to them about. Previously, when I have, what their dad chooses to share versus what my memory of certain things are look a little differently. So for me, I'm like, okay, well, I don't want to step on their toes. So like, I'm not going to bring it up, but like I sit here in silence and like watch them grow. Like I'm so sad that they don't get to know their mom and have that support system because they're 2 young girls. Like they're going to be like you know, like a motherless mothers. And they never even got to have their mom, you know, at their prom. They didn't get their mom, like their mom taught me how to do my makeup, to do my hair. And like they are not getting that. And that I don't know how to circle back, but I don't know how to grieve someone that was she left like such a legacy. And my mother, I don't know how to grieve. I don't know how to grieve her. I don't know how to circle it back.
It's again, it's normal because none of us do. That's the problem. You have such a huge person who's left a massive hole in your life, and that's, again, it comes back to the brain rewiring itself and trying to cope with the fact that you've just lost this person and you've had them forever, and that's not normal. It's like coping with, it's just not possible to know how to grieve that. And this is why it takes time. And I guess if you're seeing her children not being able to share it with them is hard too, and that will inevitably take time, maybe for the conversations when they're older, potentially, because if their father's not comfortable around you sharing their stuff with them, then it might have to be, the stories will happen. They won't ever go away. You'll always be able to share those with them later, perhaps when they're old enough to understand, and when they have their own mind of questions from you, when they'll be able to ask you certain things, and they'll understand death a little bit better and what happened to their mum and those kind of things. I know that doesn't help you in the meantime.
Do they ever ask you about her? Or is it like something that's just like, like maybe they make you feel uncomfortable? Like,
well, so when they were, especially right after this happened, like I would go down and visit them and pick them up and take them for a few days, and that's when I would like bring it up, because I always knew that the way my family dealt with grief is they didn't talk about it, and I always knew that wasn't right, so I wanted to talk about it. And then when I did, it was like I would say a story and they're like, well, my dad said this happened, or my dad said that, no, like I don't know who that person is. And I'm like, so I also just didn't stop. And then and then there's been like a lot of situations that have happened to even put like more of a layer in between it. So no, but anytime that I could bring it up, like the way that she looks, I'm like, oh my God, you look exactly like your mom. Like she had the same exact cheeks. She used to do her makeup just like this. And like, she would kill you if you had eyeliner like that. She would literally murder you. Like things like that I try to bring up, because my cousin was so bossy and monotone and very mean. And so like, I'll remind her. Things like that.
It seems like you have beautiful stories with her of things her own children didn't get to experience with her. And I hope there's a point you can share all those stories, because maybe when they become moms, they'll come to you and say, what did she do at this point? What did she do? That's
true.
I know you have another
one thing
layer.
you can do is, sorry to interrupt you, Jordan. One thing you could do, if while these things are fresh in your mind, is just write, if you haven't already, is just write them a storybook about their mum. Write them these memories, the legacy of their mum, all these things that, and when the time's right and you don't have so many boundaries to, respect, then you can pass that on, or even just, I don't know, set up an email account that's specifically for them and just write things when they, and give it to them later when they're older. Just little things like that, so that it's free, when it's fresh in your mind, you can just dump it somewhere and actually have it for them later. Because there's, as much as we love to have these memories, sometimes they don't always pop back all of a sudden when they, when you want them to. But the more you do actually share them, and the more you write them down, or the more you tell people about them, the more memories actually come back as well. So, and you'll find that.
Yeah. So I have another question. This can tie back to, both of my parents are alive. I have the exact opposite story of where Danielle and Jordan are grieving someone, their dads, that have been like a great role in their life and have been amazing, and they're grieving the loss of them. Well, my dad's alive, but my dad wasn't great, and I don't have the best memories, and it was very traumatic. growing up. So for me, my struggle is grieving someone that's alive, because I have set boundaries up where I won't communicate with him because of certain things that have happened. And I'm not looking to open up that relationship. But I also, am a person, and he's my dad at the end of the day. And there was definitely lots of fun times, but I'm having a hard time grieving someone who's still alive.
Yeah, that, I don't think you're alone in that. There are many people, and it's sometimes, family it can be difficult, whether they're, in blood relations, even if they are our fathers and mothers and things, if you've done what you've done, you're doing it to protect yourself, and that's not a bad thing. It doesn't mean you don't love them, or you don't have respect for them, or you don't miss that relationship, but you've done what you need to do in order to protect yourself, and that's okay. But you might still be grieving, and there's no real timeline or answer or solution for that as such, unless things like therapy and those sorts of things, and just keep talking about it if it's something you need to process. There's many other forms of therapy, EMDR, CBT therapy, things like that can help, but you need to find the right thing for you in order to help you, and sometimes just talking to the right person, or sometimes grief groups, you might find someone that has a similar story or has a similar relationship to you, or those kind of things. And it's always quite handy to find out other people with similar situations that you can relate to as well.
I think you do such a good job. It's like it ends with us. Like we didn't have the same experience with our fathers, and you are making sure your children have such a different experience in life, and that in itself is just so incredible, to want so much more for your kids and to work through this in that way.
Yeah, thank you.
I know this happens with friendships also, right?
Yeah.
You grieve friendships that you were best friends since childhood, and you go your separate ways for whatever reason. I feel like there's guilt involved, because why shouldn't I have them in my life? Like, they were my best friend, they did this for me, they did that for me, like they're my dad, my kids. I think there's guilt involved. I think there's missing someone, but knowing that they're also so toxic for you. Mm-hmm. I just think that's
it's a hard line.
It's a hard line. You really want them, and you're I don't think anyone's I don't think anyone goes, I don't want them. Everyone wants them in your life. You would love to have your dad in your life.
Yeah.
It just,
with boundaries, exactly.
There's just
healthy
things that are
it's like a bad addiction.
Yeah, it's just
You want it, but you shouldn't have it.
Yeah.
It's so. I think a lot of people go through that, and I think there's so many emotions that
it hurts.
Yeah.
It is. You cry at the games before. Same, because my dad isn't there. Growing up, he was the person that taught me how to play any sport, and that sucks for me that he couldn't get it together enough for him to still be there for my kids, to be there for that minimally.
Yeah, and it puts stress on you.
It's tricky,
where
and then you have guilt.
Yeah, then I have the guilt of they're missing out. Maybe I should just stay out of the way. Maybe I shouldn't go. Just have them go. All of it. It's the spiral.
You never choose for someone to not be in your life, You
never wish for it.
You never wish for that, because it's painful. No matter what ends a relationship, there's pain associated with it. You have to set boundaries. We all,
Don't feel
it doesn't
guilty
matter
about it.
blood or not blood. You have to set boundaries, because else you're creating an unhealthy environment for everyone.
It doesn't stop.
Right. And it's a circle.
The cycle continues. I have a different situation. It's kind of like Alexa's. My mom, who is so crazy, so fun, the party, the biggest personality.
She's Rachel.
Just like Rachel.
She is. She's hilarious. She is only 67, and she's in almost the final stages of dementia and Alzheimer's. Sorry. Anyway, it's the same thing about, she's here, I'm talking to her, but she's not the same person. And I try to see her every 6 months, and it's really hard to watch. So I'm grieving
You're anticipating.
a person that is like, I remember this person and I see her body and she's just like not there. She's kind of there, and it's so hard because I love her and she loves my kids and she wants, she lives far away too. So I try to keep up the relationship as much as I can, and I know soon it's going to be too late. She's not going to know who I am, but it's like, it's just chipping away, and it's like, I'm just, this grieving process, like, as hard as it sounds, sometimes I'm like, it would have been better if she could just go. And I could just grieve it.
Like, I don't know if it's better to be sick or...
I mean, Alzheimer's and dementia are
it's
cruel.
like the longest grieving process.
Yeah.
Because you're grieving.
And then when she goes, I'm gonna have to grieve it again. But it's I'm sure a lot of people. I mean, like in her too. She knows what's going on with herself. I mean, it's just. What are the actual 12 steps of grieving? Like, what is it usually? Because there's anger, there's guilt. I mean, all of it, and it's like I just keep recycling it over and over for years. I'm just like, oh my god.
But they say there is no direct line.
But she's saying it doesn't. Yeah.
It's not a direct line.
Actually, the 5 or originally 5 steps of grief, now potentially 6, weren't really created for any of these situations. They were developed by a lady called Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, and bless her soul, she did a wonderful job in educating people about grief, but it was actually predominantly made for those that were terminally ill, and those that terminally ill were trying to understand the processes that they were going through of grieving their actual departure. So that's what it was predominantly for. But as far as anticipating someone going like you are, and I'm really sorry. It's, that's so young, 67. It's just, and you're right to be having all of these feelings. It's just not, it's so not fair. You don't want to see her go like this. And that is just absolutely normal too. And so there are no real stages, because you will feel one day and then the next day, and then sometimes go back to the original one. So that's why we grief is not linear. We always say that, and you will go through this grieving process because it's anticipatory grief. You're going through anticipatory grief at the moment, and
That's the big word I couldn't remember.
I try to help you.
Sometimes scrap the terms because it sucks, right? It just, all of it sucks. And that's just, sometimes I just, all I want to do is scream, because I just think there are so many times in my life I would have wanted to change the way things happened. But for you're watching it happen. It's almost like you're standing above and you're watching this from up above going, what the hell? Like, seriously. And it's just, you don't know what else to do. There is nothing you can do except be there and, make her last days as memorable as possible. Does she have a carer?
My dad, and she has somebody else too.
Yeah.
She, it's just taken a long time, and
I think being far is also...
it's hard because she's far, so I
But
feel
you're so good
guilty.
with her.
I know.
When you see her, she's so wonderful with her.
Mm-hmm.
But my kid,
I
she
can
wants to see my
imagine.
kids,
and
and
it's not, and that's, I can relate. That whole distance thing is really, really hard too. It adds another layer, but that I know you will still feel guilty, and that's normal too. But you have to also live your life, and she wouldn't want you to, stop everything. Because when we leave home, our parents, of course they miss us and they want us to, be with them all the time. Well, I don't know about that, but anyway, but you know what I mean? Like they don't want to stop us living our lives. And, this is another example and another stage in her life where I'm sure she wouldn't want you to stop everything. So, when you get that guilt feeling, try and think about the memories and the happy times you had when she wasn't sick. And I know that she is really young. She's 67, is not old for at all. And my mum was 74 when she went, and that wasn't old in my eyes either. And when you have do you have children?
yeah, mm-hmm.
Yeah,
2 boys.
Yeah. Do you talk about her, like what things about her with them?
Oh yeah, we FaceTime. and
Nice.
she kind of knows what's going on, and she just wants to see them so much. But to fly there every time is hard because she can't come out here really anymore.
I mean, it's great. Now we have all of
Yeah.
these, technology and FaceTime and all these things, which probably actually help things like Alzheimer's and these mental illnesses now a lot more than what would have been possible in the past. When they were so cut off. I know obviously we had telephones, but it wasn't as good. Now we can FaceTime a lot more. It doesn't replace being there in person, obviously, but it's it is a small help. I used to, I had to fly to New Zealand to be with my parents and things like that when they were ill, and that just it's a world away, but it doesn't change the fact that I still felt guilty for having another life across the other side of the world and not being able to be there. But the things that you're doing are enough. Give yourself some grace and give yourself that period of where it's okay because you are doing as much as you can. So give yourself that grace.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah.
That's true.
You are doing as much as you can.
Anything like
Nick
you.
bitch. Try makeup on me.
She would be loving all your moves.
No, she wants to be here.
Steph, let's hear about your
right.
story.
I'm gonna try to pull myself together. Okay. I would say the last. I guess I haven't dealt with the grief as well as I should have. So the last 4-ish years has been a lot. I had twin nephews, and one passed away at about 3.5 months old. He wasn't supposed to. I know sometimes you hear these stories, premature babies, and that wasn't supposed to happen. We were supposed to bring both babies home, and it just didn't. That changed our family forever. I think nothing prepares you for the loss of a baby. Besides how hard it was on the family and the adults and my brother and sister-in-law, my daughter, who was 7 at the time, had a particularly hard time with it, to the point where for 9-10 months, I would pick her up from school and she would get in my car and be on the floor, like having a panic attack. I mean, it was hard. So just trying to be strong for her and for everyone else in my family. I have a son who's younger, and that loss didn't affect him as much. He was in kindergarten at the time. But my daughter, that was, it was tough. So we dealt with that and we worked through it, and of course it's still hard, and now I have a beautiful niece. And what was interesting is my daughter had one time said, when my sister-in-law was pregnant with my niece, do you think if Jaden didn't pass away, Callie would be here? And so that was just like, of course, yes, of course she would, but that's also something that is kind of like a weird thing to process for a young child. So that was a lot. She also had a hard time because it was during COVID, and I and the adults in my family were allowed to visit the babies in the hospital, and particularly Jaden, who had passed away. I was able to meet him and be with him in like the final weeks, but she was never able to be there with him. And I think as a 7-year-old, that's also something that you think about, is like hard to understand, like everyone else. She had this vision in her head. My daughter's like an old soul and so maternal. And so she had this vision in her head of having twin cousins that she gets to like play with and babysit. And now she doesn't. She still has a beautiful relationship, you know, with Bennett, my other nephew. But I think for her too, it was hard. Like, you guys all got to meet him and I didn't. And now where do I stand, kind of thing. So we worked through that with her. And then a year ago, my father-in-law passed away very, very unexpectedly, a heart attack. And the tricky part of that is that my mother-in-law, his wife, has been very, very sick with Parkinson's for years, for 15 years, a long time. At this point now, she's pretty bedridden. And I think the hardest part with that is, for lack of better terms, we expected her to pass away first, which, you know, it's just kind of, and for my father-in-law to pass away before her, we've now had to step in as, she's always had caregivers, but we've had to kind of step up a little bit. And thank God for my other sister-in-law, who's doing an amazing job taking care of her mother. But I think the hardest part with both of those situations is, like, you have this vision of what your life is going to look like. I had a vision of having twin nephews. And then we also had a vision of my father-in-law being back in our life, because he wasn't the grandfather he hoped and wanted to be for so long, because he was always with my mother-in-law and taking care of her, and only able to come to dinner for an hour because she had to get home, or couldn't make it to the Dodger game with my son because, well, Gigi isn't feeling good. And so we always imagined, okay, my mother-in-law will pass away when she's ready, and then we'll have my father-in-law finally back in our life as how he wants to be, you know? So it's just kind of that, like, for me, it's like,
you feel robbed of so much.
Yeah.
The grief of what you wanted.
Yes.
What you have.
Yeah, it's just like you imagine and envision these exciting things to happen, and then it just doesn't.
Someone takes them away.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, I don't really know what my question is. I guess it's just more like working through.
How do you let go of what you thought life was going to be like?
Yeah.
Again, firstly, I'm so sorry for all that you've been through. My heart goes out to you too. It's just this is very complicated, you know, and you shouldn't downplay any of this. This is just, you know, this is a lot. It's a lot. This is a lot of grief and a lot of different scenarios to comprehend and come to terms with and deal with, and that's not an easy feat. You know, even the fact that you're sitting here is all of you, the fact that you're even talking about this here is amazing. So, you know, give yourself some credit and some grace.
It also shows life is like just super hard, no matter what.
Yeah,
you know?
yeah. I mean, if any of us had thought that, you know, hey, life would have been completely perfect had I, you know, had my parents still around and my brother and all of that stuff, but it wasn't meant to be for some goddamn reason, and I don't know why. And so when you look at your scenario with losing a baby, and your father-in-law and his wife too, it's just all of that is so complicated, and you have been robbed, and there's no other way to say that. And it's okay to say that, you know, there is absolutely no one that can take that away from you. However, you know, I feel like sometimes when we are grieving one after the other, when we haven't processed the first one. And quite often I've done this a lot with clients, and, say, have you really grieved the first loss, and that's something I ask them to either potentially go for, to see someone professionally and actually just process them one by one, because they can quite often, you can't separate them, in your head. You've got this traumatic experience of losing one after the other, and you've got so much to process in one time, which is actually not that long either. You are going through one thing after the other in the space of 4 years, and that's a very short space of time. The first year, the second year, and then you get hit by another one, and then another one, and that's a lot for anybody to take on. But if we haven't grieved the first one properly, or been able to accept the fact that that's happened, then that can play a big part on not being able to process the other ones after as well.
Right. Yeah. Moira, I actually feel when you said you did get robbed, when everyone sugarcoats everything, and I feel like that was actually refreshing to hear. Yeah, it does fucking suck you don't talk to your dad. That does fucking suck. I think that people are so scared to say things oh, it's gonna be okay. Oh, I'm thinking of you. You know what I mean? It's not gonna be okay.
It fucking sucks.
You don't always have to see
the positive.
You don't always, right? You always don't have to see well, this happened because of this. No. Well, yes, I mean, in years down the line.
But right now,
I wish someone I just the realness of it. Okay, yeah, I know you're thinking of me, but no, that fucking sucks. I don't want a pity party. I don't want someone to be oh, I'm so sorry. Or, but you have so much love in you. No, yeah, I do have great things in my life, but I also lost my dad.
Sometimes all you want to hear is, I'm here for you, because there's nothing anyone can say to make it better.
I think the better thing when people say is when they say, I don't know what to say.
What do you, what would you tell people to say to someone who is going through grief, who did lose someone, who lost the unimaginable, losing a baby? What do you say to people, and how, what's the way to go about it? Because I'm thinking of you. Yeah, okay, sweet. You sent me a sweet, I'm thinking of you text. But to me, when people say that to me, I'm kind of and I still say it to people, I'm thinking of you, because I really am
thinking of you.
To my closest friends, I am thinking of you all the time, When Jordan was sick, I was I'm thinking of you. I haven't stopped thinking about it, because I am actually thinking about her.
And I know you are.
But I know the people oh, I'm thinking of you. You know what I mean? It's okay, thank you, but that's annoying.
How can people support other people grieving?
Tell me this fucking sucks. That's what we're gonna send it in from now on. That fucking sucks. It's a bad day. Sit in it. Yeah. I'll bring you a donut.
How can people best support other people grieving?
But in all seriousness, I do this a lot with part of why I set up Grief Span Education was to educate those that actually aren't going through grief how to support others in grief. And I mean, there are a number of things that I tell people that they can do. And I actually have clients that come to me and say, this person's lost their person and I really want to support them. How can I do that? And it is literally just being there, but also being there in a sincere sense, not just saying, I'm here if you need me, because that actually puts the onus on the person that is actually grieving, So if you say to someone, call me if you need me, that's not what they need. They need someone to go and knock on the door, take them something, take them a meal, offer to take them to an appointment or whatever it might be, or just sit with them, walk in their door. You don't even have to say anything. Sit with them, sit and do a movie, drink a bottle of wine, whatever you want to do. It's just be there. You don't even have to say anything. And that's, we all get very awkward around people that are grieving, and it's very... And it's okay too, for those people that haven't been through it. I was probably like it when I hadn't lost someone. What do I do? What do I say? How do I approach this? Do I avoid them? Do I say something? There's a really nice story about, and I can't remember where I heard it now, but it was about someone who had a really close friend who'd lost their parents. And this person texts this person at the same time every single day for however long. Didn't matter whether they heard back from them. It might have actually even been a phone call. I can't remember now. But this person dedicated every single morning at a specific time to actually message that person until they were ready to... I think it actually took 8 months for the person to actually even respond or even have the energy and ability to actually go, hey, But it was the fact that they kept on doing it. The fact of people when they, you know, you have the funeral and then they go on with their lives and we don't. You know, the funeral is just the start of our grief. You know, it kind of hits home. I know it's happened to me when I got back from New Zealand after giving my dad his memorial service. I started my grieving process all over again because now there was nothing. There was nothing to do. There was no family left. I had no paperwork left to do. That was it. It was final. As far as people, what they should say and what they shouldn't say, I probably shouldn't go down the what you shouldn't say route too much, but basically all of the things I've just said are just being there, just help them, and also just listen to stories. Or how about tell me about when this person, don't be afraid to approach them and ask them questions about their loved one that just passed either, because that's what sometimes is the biggest help. You know, I love talking about my parents. I don't want people to shy away and say, oh my gosh, I'm sorry, and that's it, that's the end of the conversation. I want people to ask me, oh, what did your dad do? What was his name? Say their name. You know, say your loved one's name, which is why I've asked most of you what their names were, because it's important. It's really important to share names. So today, before you leave, talk about them, say their name, and share at least one story about your loved ones that have gone. I don't know what you believe in when it comes to signs as well.
I believe all the signs. I love signs.
I believe all the signs too. I'm glad you said that. I always tread carefully because I don't always know.
I love the signs.
Everything that comes crawling or flying.
Yeah.
And I won't kill it because I'm scared it's my dad.
I love the signs. The signs are what bring me comfort.
Yeah.
If I didn't have the signs, I really couldn't have survived, honestly.
No, me too. Absolutely. It's helped me enormously. And I always think, you know, I've had a really good life, you know, despite having what's happened to me. I've had a really good life. 2 beautiful children, now 10 and 8, almost 8, and a wonderful husband. And we have a wonderful life in Spain. And sometimes I think, and I pinch myself and I go, why? And I always think my parents and my brother are looking after me and making sure that all these lovely things happen, and they are looking after me, and they are... Sorry. See, it still happens. And it's just the reason why, you know, it's the reason why I'm doing what I do, because actually, just to share a little bit of a story too, GriefSpan is named after my dad, because we started a little company when I was a teenager called TimeSpan. My dad was big on journaling and telling stories and writing and all sorts of things, and he called his little company TimeSpan. So when I wanted to start this, GriefSpan was just the instant name I thought of, so it was named after my dad. So again, it's a meaningful thing, it's my purpose, it's everything. So even those little things that you can think of to do to honor your loved ones.
Moira, this conversation has truly been such a gift and so needed, and I know it's going to help and resonate with all of our listeners. So thank you for your honesty, your gentleness, and really giving us and our listeners the permission to live with our grief. Can you tell us and our listeners where we can find your work?
Sure. I have a reasonably large community now on Instagram under GriefSpan Education, and that's predominantly where I do most of my work. And it's on Facebook as well, so everything is on GriefSpan Education on Facebook as well. And I have a website, justgriefspan.com.
Well, thank you, Moira, so much.
No, thank you. And I wish I could give you all a big hug. And I know today is a lot, so I know it's early in the morning, but whatever you need to do, I'm on wine time. It's Friday night wine time here, so I know it might be a bit early for you, but even if you have a mimosa, just go on and do something.
I think I need one.
Relaxes
We're coming on a grief girls trip to Spain.
We hope for our listeners, you share this with anyone who could benefit from listening to this episode. And we just want to remind our listeners to be gentle with yourself. And we'll see you next time on the Pudding Pals Podcast.
Thank you.